It looks like the Indiana Fever organization is already falling apart right before our eyes. And the Atlanta Dream are a legitimate team. They have legitimate size. They have all-stars on both wings. And you know when people play against Caitlin Clark, it's their Super Bowl. So even the players who don't seem that great, they're going to play their hardest, and they usually tend to play their best when it's against Caitlin Clark.
This is a huge communication failure. What we just heard is basically an admission that a professional sports team is starting to break apart from the inside. Every regular season game is turning into a battle. When opposing teams treat a normal game like it's the biggest game of their season, the team's foundation becomes difficult to maintain. The bigger question is why the leadership group seems to be doing nothing while the pressure around their star player keeps growing. The answer points to a major disagreement inside the organization about what the team's real business goals should be.
Here's why I say there's some truth to it. Is when they overreacted and banned this Scott Agnes. That's a sign of desperation. That's a sign of chaos. That's a sign of like, hey, the heat's been turned up. Let's do something irrational trying to fix it, blah, blah, blah. But is the Caitlin Six, the people in charge of the Fever organization as put together right now, they are totally behind Stephanie White. That the organization is actually built around Stephanie White more than it is built around Caitlin Clark.
The reported ban of beat reporter Scott Agnes from Twitter is being viewed by many as a sign of growing tension within the organization. When a team limits access to local media, it can create the impression that management is more focused on controlling the narrative than expanding the brand. Critics argue that executives Kelly Crosskop, Lynn Dunn, and Amber Cox are building a protective shield around head coach Stephanie White. Instead of creating the most competitive environment for their top draft pick, they appear to be prioritizing the stability of the coaching staff. This decision has fueled concerns about a growing disconnect between the organization's internal structure and the expectations of fans, media, and the broader market.
I think that anytime you see a star and a head coach have that type of interaction that was seen publicly, there's going to be some sort of conversation about what would be best going forward. And potentially, I think this is going on with Stephanie White, but ultimately, I don't think it's at a serious level. I think that just as much as Steve Kim, you may see and feel that, the Stephanie White being fired thing is picking up. I think with the Caitlin Clark Six that Jason Whitlock referenced, they are having just as many conversations.
According to this perspective, conversations inside the front office appear to be moving toward a shocking conclusion. Rather than embracing the attention, scrutiny, and expectations that come with having a superstar player, management may be considering whether reducing that pressure is easier than dealing with the constant public accountability that follows her. Critics argue that this approach resembles the mindset seen in other organizations, where leadership seemed more comfortable operating without intense media attention or high public expectations. Instead of prioritizing elite performance and maximizing growth opportunities, the focus becomes maintaining a quieter and more controllable environment. Supporters of this view believe that such a strategy could limit revenue growth, reduce fan engagement, and ultimately weaken the long-term economic strength of the franchise and the league as a whole.
You know what else goes away? About 2/3 of your audience. I mean, I know it's a mom-and-pop organization without Caitlin Clark. It's also probably one that doesn't do as well at the box office. So I get it. Ticket sales aren't the end-all and be-all nowadays, but it's not like they have an NBA television contract. I mean, to me, you guys think that as soon as Caitlin Clark leaves Indiana, if that happens, that we will never focus in on the Fever. I disagree a little bit in a sense that for the first season, I would even be interested in this. What happens to their attendance in the immediate aftermath of jettisoning your biggest
According
star?
to this argument, the financial impact of disappointing a national fan base can be seen directly in ticket sales. Critics claim that a significant injury to a star player was publicly described as a minor, short-term issue rather than a more serious condition, allowing the organization to maintain ticket demand and public optimism. They also argue that when local reporters tried to reveal a longer recovery timeline, the team responded by limiting or challenging those reports instead of providing greater transparency. As trust between the organization and fans weakened, attendance reportedly declined, leading to fewer fans in the arena and reducing the economic benefits that large crowds bring to the local sports community. However, claims about injury reporting, media restrictions, and their direct impact on attendance should be independently verified with reliable evidence.
This is really his fault. That the Indiana Fever are a charity, and it's a tax write-off for him. And that's how this business is being run. And so the results don't matter. And so Lynn Dunn, Kelly Krauskopf, Amber Cox, Stephanie White, they don't care about the results. They don't care about ticket sales. Because her rookie year, they're averaging 17,000. This year, I think they're around 14.5, somewhere around it. So we've already seen a dip in ticket prices. The way the ratings aren't being talked about and celebrated anymore the way they used to. Every game, you'd hear the story about the ratings. It makes me think the ratings are starting to slip.
According to this criticism, the root of the issue starts with majority owner Herb Simon and the organization's long-established culture. Critics argue that the franchise has often been run more as a community-focused institution than as an aggressive, profit-driven sports business. Because ownership has substantial resources outside of basketball operations, they claim that team executives are less affected by the financial pressures that typically force organizations to maximize attendance, television audiences, and overall fan engagement. As a result, decision-makers may prioritize stability, control, and internal management goals over pursuing rapid growth or fully capitalizing on the popularity of star players. Supporters of this view believe that such an approach can create an insulated environment where maintaining organizational control becomes more important than responding to market demand and fan expectations.
And you know what? Let's get Caitlin Clark out of there. Let's move her to Golden State. Let's move her to New York. Let's move her someplace else that will work better for us, and we'll get her partnered with a organization that actually is trying to look at this as a business. But it's just not going to work in Indiana because of who the owner is, because of the 6 women that he's empowered and their whole mission of Stephanie White, because they don't care. And I think that's what they're trying, the struggle they're having with Caitlin Clark is like, y'all don't care? Her agent is like, y'all don't care? And they're like, yeah, we don't care. We're in good with the home.
A growing conflict is reportedly developing between the team's local ownership group and the league's broader business interests. According to this viewpoint, ownership may be focused on maintaining a stable and controlled operation, while league officials are more concerned with maximizing revenue, fan engagement, media attention, and overall commercial growth. Supporters of this argument point to attendance trends as evidence that the market is adjusting. They note that home games once drew around 17,000 fans on average during the highly anticipated rookie season, while more recent crowds have reportedly been closer to 14,500. They also argue that public discussion around television ratings has become less prominent than it was during the peak of the initial excitement. Taken together, these developments are viewed by critics as signs that some of the momentum generated during the franchise's surge in popularity may be cooling. However, specific attendance and viewership figures should be verified through official league, team, or broadcast data before drawing firm conclusions.
Stephanie White should be given an extension because her system is so good that when people actually buy into it, don't take bad shots, don't act like divas, the team is really good. It is really good. Without, you mentioned it, they win things, they do all this without it. The system's great. The star is a pain in the ass. And they haven't won enough with the star. He mentions Michael Jordan, he mentions Bird, he mentions Magic, he mentions the Jackson 5. All those won at incredible levels with those guys. Fever haven't won shit. Nothing, zero, zip, not one thing.
The public messaging coming out of Indianapolis appears to be changing significantly. According to this viewpoint, some well-known regional analysts and media personalities are increasingly echoing themes that align with the front office's perspective. When commentators describe a generational star as an internal challenge while emphasizing the importance of the coach's system, critics see it as more than simple analysis. They argue that it can function as a public relations strategy designed to shape fan opinion and prepare the ground for a possible future split between the player and the organization. Supporters of this theory believe the narrative is being carefully built over time, creating a contrast between the public defense of the coaching staff and ongoing questions about the team's on-court results and overall direction. They argue that this shift in messaging becomes especially noticeable when compared with the coaching staff's professional record and the expectations that come with managing a high-profile franchise and superstar
Who's got
talent.
more winning on their resume, her or Stephanie White?
Stephanie White. This is the thing. I saw that and I said, well, that's interesting. Stephanie White has never won. She's clinging on to being an assistant. This is the equivalent of you being a NFL practice film coordinator and that team wins the Super Bowl, and you are being paraded around as some championship coach. She has never won. She was awful at Vanderbilt. So many players quit the program, they had to forfeit the season. She's that bad. And another thing, when she was in Connecticut, she had Alyssa Thomas, who was one of the best 4 players in the league, always in the MVP running. Alyssa Thomas would snatch the clipboard from Stephanie White in the huddle.
The historical record, according to critics, highlights what they see as a contradiction in the front office's message. Management is perceived as arguing that a young star player must adapt to an established coaching system in order to succeed. However, critics point out that head coach Stephanie White has not won a professional championship as a head coach, leading them to question whether the system has earned the level of trust and authority being demanded. They also cite reports of challenges during previous coaching stops and moments of visible disagreement involving veteran players during her tenure with the Connecticut Sun. From this perspective, the issue is not whether players should follow a system, but whether the organization is placing too much confidence in a structure that has yet to produce a championship at the highest professional level. Supporters of this view argue that if management expects players to fully embrace the coaching philosophy, the system itself must be able to demonstrate a clear and proven record of elite success. It is important to note, however, that claims about specific incidents, internal conflicts, or the reasons behind roster changes can be subject to interpretation and may not fully reflect the perspectives of everyone involved. Public reports often provide only a partial view of what occurs inside a team environment.
It's the everyday being like, what the is this idiot going to do today? Now, they don't say that publicly because you can't criticize Caitlin Clark if you're on the team, but that's what it's become. Last year, you see Caitlin Clark when she was injured, all with her girls, Lexi Hall and Sophie Cunningham. You don't see that anymore, do you?
That was a key tell. And again, that's inside information, and he's right. Think of, the team walk-ins that they do, getting off the bus, and they do the little photograph deal. And we used to see Caitlin Clark joking around with Lexi or Sophie in the pregame walk-in. Haven't seen that this year. I think that's what he's talking about.
The growing sense of isolation is reportedly becoming visible in everyday team interactions. According to this viewpoint, observations from pre-game arrivals, team travel footage, and public media content suggest that the level of visible interaction between the team's biggest star and some veteran teammates, including Sophie Cunningham, has decreased over time. Supporters of this theory note that earlier promotional efforts often highlighted shared appearances, travel moments, and collaborative branding opportunities, while more recent content appears less connected and more individual-focused. Critics argue that this shift reflects a broader trend in which players are concentrating more on developing their own personal brands than on publicly displaying team unity. From their perspective, a fragmented public image can make it harder to build the strong player relationships and collective identity that help drive fan engagement. They also believe that if a team loses the sense of shared momentum that attracts fans and sponsors, individual players could ultimately miss out on long-term commercial opportunities that come from being part of a highly successful and culturally influential group. At the same time, it is important to recognize that public appearances, social media content, and travel footage provide only a limited view of team relationships. A lack of visible interaction does not necessarily indicate poor chemistry, conflict, or separation behind the scenes.
But when it comes to Sophie Cunningham, we got behind Sophie Cunningham because of the Connecticut Sun game when we felt like she got some get back for Caitlin Clark versus JC Sheldon in the Connecticut Sun. And that is why we got behind her. But you got to understand, Sophie Cunningham, the first thing she said before she even got to Indiana was, plan for Caitlin the Fever would be great for branding. Branding was the first thing she said. And Sophie Cunningham has come here. She's become famous. She got 1 million followers overnight. She got national televised Arby's commercials. I think I saw her on NFL Network before. She's all over. Sophie Cunningham at this point has gained her celebrity. She doesn't need Caitlin Clark.
The economics of women's professional basketball have changed dramatically in recent years, creating new opportunities for players to build financial success outside of their team salaries. Increased media attention, larger audiences, and stronger corporate interest have allowed many athletes to grow their personal brands, attract major endorsement deals, and expand their social media reach. Partnerships with large companies, including brands such as Arby's, have become more common as corporations seek to capitalize on the sport's growing popularity. According to this viewpoint, once players establish strong endorsement portfolios and independent revenue streams, their careers become less dependent on any single team or even the long-term financial health of the league. Supporters of this argument believe that the influx of sponsorship money has shifted incentives, encouraging athletes to focus more heavily on personal brand development alongside their on-court performance. As a result, career decisions may increasingly be influenced by individual business opportunities, audience growth, and marketability rather than solely by traditional measures such as team chemistry, organizational loyalty, or franchise stability. At the same time, team success and league growth still play a major role in creating the visibility that makes these endorsement opportunities possible. For many athletes, personal brand value and the overall health of the league remain closely connected rather than completely separate.
Pardon, she also already signed with Project B, the new overseas league. I believe that it's been reported she's got a $2 million contract. And that's what we're talking about, Steve. People come, you join Caitlin Clark's team, and that's why you got to be careful with the teammates you bring in. We gotta be clear of motives here. She got a $2 million Project B deal. Ari McDonald last season was on the couch to start the season. She got on Caitlin Clark's team, got popular, and went and got $250,000 in Unrivaled. A bunch of Caitlin Clark's teammates have gotten deals specifically off of popularity they've gained next to her.
The financial independence of players has changed the balance of power across women's basketball. With growing media attention, endorsement opportunities, and alternative playing options, many athletes now have ways to earn significant income beyond their league salaries. Supporters of this view point to reports of lucrative opportunities from emerging basketball ventures and off-season competitions, arguing that players who once relied almost entirely on team contracts can now operate with far greater financial freedom. As a result, some believe that teams and leagues no longer have the same economic leverage they once held over top talent. Once long-term labor agreements and compensation structures are secured, players may feel less dependent on any single star, franchise, or league for financial stability. According to this argument, the traditional relationship between organizations and athletes is evolving, with individual brands becoming nearly as important as team brands. Critics of the franchise's leadership take this argument a step further. They claim the organization's business model is failing because decision-makers are not prioritizing growth, revenue generation, or maximizing the value of their most marketable assets. Instead, they argue that leadership is focused on preserving an insulated culture with limited accountability, even if that means failing to fully capitalize on the popularity of a generational talent. This leads to the central debate: if a player possesses extraordinary market value and believes an organization is limiting their potential, should they seek a better opportunity elsewhere? Or does a professional athlete have a responsibility to adapt to the team's structure and work within the organization regardless of management's shortcomings? That question remains at the heart of many discussions surrounding modern professional sports, where player empowerment, personal branding, and organizational control are increasingly competing forces.